The Great Hall of Binding was the most beautiful room on the planet Ethera. Crystal pillars rose from the floor like frozen lightning, and the ceiling was open to a sky filled with 3 moons. Hundreds of alien delegations stood in rows along the hall, their bodies glowing, clicking, humming, and shifting in every shape and color the galaxy had to offer. They had all come to witness the same ancient tradition, the binding. Princess Lineara Val Sotharan stood at the center of it all. She was tall, even by the standards of the Vathari, 7 feet of silver-blue skin, with bioluminescent patterns that moved across her arms, like living tattoos. Her eyes were large and violet, and when she blinked, the light in the room seemed to shift with her. She was the heir to the Vathari Dominion, one of the oldest and most powerful empires in the known galaxy. And today, she had to choose a mate. Not a real mate, of course. The binding was political theater. Every few generations, the Vathari heir was required to select a companion from a lesser species, someone ranked Tier 7 or below in the Galactic Concord's classification system. It was supposed to be a gesture of humility, a reminder that even the mighty Vathari valued the smaller civilizations. In truth, everyone knew what it really was. The chosen mate would live in the palace, smile at ceremonies, and serve as a living decoration, a pet with a title. Lineara had accepted this duty without complaint. She had studied the candidates from dozens of species. The insectoid Chilari had sent a warrior with beautiful iridescent wings. The aquatic Dren had offered a diplomat who could breathe both water and air. The silicon-based Gorvathi had presented a sculptor whose body was made of living crystal. All of them were impressive in their own way. All of them were trying very, very hard to be chosen. And then there were the humans. Humanity was classified as Tier 9, the lowest rank in the Concord that still qualified as spacefaring. They had only left their home system a few decades ago. They had no telekinetic abilities, no natural armor, no bioluminescence, no venom, no radiation resistance. By galactic standards, they were soft, slow, fragile, and unremarkable. Most species in the Concord forgot they existed. Earth's ambassador, a woman named Director Elaine Voss, had brought 5 candidates. They stood at the far end of the hall, looking small and plain next to the towering aliens around them. They wore simple dark uniforms, no decorations, no genetic enhancements on display. They looked, Lineara thought, like they had wandered into the wrong building. One of them caught her attention. He stood at the back of the human group, slightly apart from the others. He was not tall, maybe 6 feet, which made him a full foot shorter than Lineara. His hair was dark, cut short. His face was calm, almost blank. He was not smiling. He was not standing at attention. He was simply watching. His eyes moved slowly across the room, taking in every detail, every delegation, every exit. And when those eyes finally met hers, Lineara felt something she did not expect. Weight. There was a weight behind his gaze. Not aggression. Not fear. Something deeper. Something patient. It was like looking into a still lake and suddenly realizing the water was much, much deeper than it appeared. His name, according to the roster, was Captain Damon Kale. She chose him. The reaction was immediate. A wave of murmuring swept through the great hall like wind through tall grass. The Vathari courtiers exchanged glances of disbelief. A human? The princess had chosen a human? Commander Thyrak, Val Orentis, who stood among the military delegation with his arms crossed over his massive chest, let out a sound that was somewhere between a laugh and a growl. He had wanted the binding to go to a Krithari warrior, a species allied with his political faction. A human was not just a surprise. It was an insult. Lineara ignored them all. She stepped down from the raised platform and walked toward the human delegation. The crowd parted for her. Every eye in the hall followed. Damon did not move. He did not kneel, as tradition suggested. He did not bow his head. He simply looked up at her, because she was taller, and waited. "You are Captain Damon Kale of Earth?" she asked. Her voice was formal, but curiosity flickered in her violet eyes. "I am," he said. His voice was quiet, steady. There was no tremor in it. "Do you accept the binding?" "I do." That was all. No speech, no flattery, no attempt to impress. 2 words, spoken as if he were confirming a simple fact. Linera studied his face for a long moment. She could read nothing in it. Most beings she met were like open books, their emotions written in their body language, their bioluminescent patterns, their chemical signals. This human was a closed door. She found that fascinating. The ceremony concluded with the traditional rituals, the exchange of light, the speaking of oaths, the symbolic joining of hands. Damon's hand was warm and dry in hers. She noticed, briefly, that his grip was precise, not too firm, not too soft, as if he had calculated exactly how much pressure to use. She filed that observation away and thought nothing more of it. As the delegations filed out of the Great Hall, Director Voss lingered. She watched Damon walk away at Lineara's side, his dark uniform moving through a sea of glowing alien bodies like a shadow among stars. When the hall was nearly empty, she activated a small device on her wrist, a quantum-encrypted communicator that could reach Earth instantly across any distance. She chose Kale, Voss said quietly. There was a pause. Then a voice responded, calm, controlled, and completely without emotion. Good. God's seed is in position. Begin. Phase 2. Voss closed the channel and allowed herself a small, careful breath. She looked at the crystal ceiling, the floating lights, the beauty of the most powerful alien civilization in the galaxy. Then she thought about the man she had just delivered into its heart. Damon Kale was not what he appeared to be. He was not a simple soldier. He was not a diplomatic offering. He was the product of a program so classified that fewer than 40 people on Earth knew it existed. Project Godseed had found something buried in human DNA, something ancient, something impossible, something that did not match any evolutionary model known to science. And they had learned how to wake it up. The Vathari thought they had chosen a pet. They had invited a wolf into the garden. And the wolf was already watching, already listening, already learning. Because Damon Kale knew something that Princess Linera, with all her power and beauty and ancient bloodline, did not. The Vathari Dominion was not the benevolent empire it pretended to be. And humanity was done pretending to be weak. The consort wing of the royal palace was beautiful in the way a cage could be beautiful. Golden bars were still bars. Damon Kale had been living there for 3 weeks. His rooms were large, filled with soft light, and alien furniture that adjusted to his body when he sat down. A window the size of a wall looked out over Ethera's bioluminescent ocean, where waves glowed pink and blue in the endless twilight. It was, by any measure, the most luxurious prison in the galaxy. He was given a handler, a young Vathari male named Sevik, whose job was to manage the human's daily life. Sevik was polite, efficient, and clearly uncomfortable with the assignment. He spoke to Damon the way someone might speak to a clever dog, slowly, with simple words, and with a smile that never quite reached his eyes. Your meal is ready, Consort Kale, Sevik would say each morning, presenting a tray of food that had been carefully modified for human biology. It was bland, soft, easy to digest. As if they were afraid real Vathari food might kill him, Damon ate it without complaint. He thanked Sevik in broken Vathari, deliberately mispronouncing words he had already mastered. He fumbled with the alien utensils. He asked simple questions. What is this called? And, where does this hallway go? That made Sevik relax and feel important. The court watched him and saw exactly what they expected to see. A primitive, a pet, a harmless creature from a forgettable planet. That was exactly what Damon wanted them to see. At night, when the palace was quiet, he moved through the corridors like smoke. The Vathari security systems were advanced motion sensors, energy fields, biometric locks, but they were designed to detect Vathari threats, telekinetic signatures, energy weapon discharges, alien biological markers. They were not designed for a creature that could lower his heart rate to 30 beats per minute, suppress his thermal signature through conscious control of his blood flow, and move with a silence that came not from training, but from a body that had been rebuilt at the cellular level. He accessed restricted terminals. He read classified files. He memorized patrol patterns, communication frequencies, and the names of every political faction in the Dominion. He did all of this without leaving a single trace. During the days, he played the fool, and he waited. Princess Linnea began visiting him in the second week. At first, the visits were short and formal, a duty she performed because tradition required the binding partners to spend time together. She would sit across from him in the garden courtyard, ask how he was adjusting, and receive polite, simple answers. But Linnea was not stupid. She was, in fact, one of the sharpest political minds in the Dominion. And slowly, she began to notice things. She noticed that Daemon's eyes tracked every person who entered the room before she was even aware of them. She noticed that his questions, while phrased simply, often touched on subjects that should have been beyond a Tier 9 primitive's understanding. One afternoon he asked her about the Rithali, a species name she had never heard. When she told him she did not know the name, something flickered across his face. Not surprise. Sadness. "Maybe I read it wrong," he said, and changed the subject. But she did not forget the name. Later, she searched for it in the palace archives and found nothing. The name had been erased. That made her curious. And curiosity, for Linnea, was a dangerous thing. The real test came in the 4th week, when Commander Thyrak arranged a sparring demonstration. The invitation was delivered with a smile and a bow, but everyone in the court knew what it was, a public humiliation. Thyrak wanted to remind the Dominion that the princess had chosen a weak, inferior creature as her mate. What better way than to put him in a fighting ring? The demonstration was held in the Grand Arena, a circular chamber with floating observation platforms. Half the court attended. Linnea sat in the royal box, her expression carefully neutral, her hands tight in her lap. Daemon was given a blunt training rod. His opponent was a Vaethari cadet named Korath, 7 feet tall, 260 pounds of lean muscle, with telekinetic abilities that could throw a ground car across a street. Korath was young, eager, and visibly excited to fight a human. He spun his own training rod with casual, flashy movements, playing to the crowd. Daemon stood in the center of the ring, holding his rod loosely, looking vaguely confused. The match began. Korath attacked with speed that would have been invisible to an untrained eye. A sweeping telekinetic push, followed by 3 rapid strikes with the rod. The crowd expected the human to crumble immediately. Instead, Daemon stumbled backward, caught one hit on his shoulder, dodged another by what appeared to be clumsy luck, and fell to one knee. Korath pressed the advantage. He struck Daemon twice more hard blows to the ribs and back that echoed through the arena. Daemon hit the ground. The crowd murmured with satisfaction. Thyrak smiled, but in the royal box, Linnea's eyes narrowed. Something was wrong. She had watched thousands of sparring matches. She knew what a real beating looked like, and what she had just seen was not quite real. Daemon had fallen, yes, but he had fallen in a controlled way. His body had absorbed the impacts at angles that minimized damage. He had moved his weight at the exact right moments. It was subtle, so subtle, that no one else seemed to notice. But Linnea had spent her life reading bodies, and this body was lying. He got up. Korath knocked him down again. He got up again. The crowd laughed. Thyrak looked pleased. In the medical section of the observation platform, a Jorvian biologist named Dr. Quillix was not laughing. She had been running a passive biological scan on both fighters' standard practice for arena events. Korath's readings were normal. Elevated heart rate, adrenaline spike, telekinetic energy output within expected parameters. Daemon's readings made no sense. His heart rate had not increased. His adrenaline levels were elevated, but in a pattern she had never seen. Controlled, rhythmic, as if his body was dosing itself with precision. And his cellular density, she ran the scan twice, to make sure was nearly 3 times that of any human on record. His bones were reading as denser than Vaethari battle armor. This man had just taken hits that should have shattered ribs. He did not have a single fracture. Dr. Quillix saved the data, closed her scanner, and said nothing to anyone. But her hands were shaking. That night, Linnea came to Daemon's quarters. She expected to find him in pain, perhaps humiliated, perhaps needing medical attention. Instead, she found him sitting by the window, reading a Vathari history text, not a translated version. The original, written in High Vathari script, a language so complex that most Vathari citizens could not read it fluently. He looked up when she entered. There was no pain on his face, no bruising, nothing. "You have been pretending," she said. It was not a question. He held her gaze for a long moment. Then he set the book down and said, in perfect, unaccented Vathari, "Your language is beautiful." I did not want to rush it. The air between them changed. Every assumption she had made about this man, about his species, about his purpose here cracked like thin ice over deep water. She stared at him, and for the first time, she did not see a pet, a primitive, or a political symbol. She saw something she could not name, something vast and quiet, and terribly, terribly patient. "Who are you?" she whispered. Damon looked at her with those still, deep eyes, and he smiled just barely, just enough. "I am exactly who you chose," he said. "You just do not know what that means yet." Linnea left his quarters that night with more questions than answers, and a feeling in her chest that she had not felt in a very long time. Fear, and something dangerously close to fascination. The diplomatic summit on Axis Primera was supposed to be routine, a gathering of Concord representatives on a neutral space station to discuss trade routes and border adjustments. The kind of event where nothing important happened and everyone pretended otherwise. Linnea attended because she was expected to. Damon attended because, as her binding partner, he was required to stand at her side during public events. He wore a simple dark suit that the Vathari tailors had made for him, and he stood one step behind her left shoulder, quiet as a shadow. In the weeks since the sparring match, something had shifted between them. Linnea had not confronted him again about his deception. She was too smart for that. Instead, she watched him more carefully. And the more she watched, the more she saw. She saw how his eyes moved when they entered a room not with curiosity, but with calculation. Every door, every window, every person. He mapped threats the way she mapped political alliances, instantly and without effort. She saw how he positioned himself when they walked, always between her and the nearest open space, always within arm's reach. She saw how the servants in the palace had started to like him because he learned their names, asked about their families, and never once treated them as beneath him. He was dangerous. She was certain of that now. But he was also, in some way she could not fully explain, good. On Axis Primera, the delegations mixed in a reception hall with transparent walls that looked out into open space. Stars burned in every direction. Linnea spoke with ambassadors, traded diplomatic pleasantries, and played the political games she had been trained for since birth. Damon stood nearby, holding a glass of something he was not drinking, and watched. He noticed the Krithari delegation first. There were too many of them. A standard Krithari diplomatic group was 6 to 8 individuals. Damon counted 14. 3 of them were wearing formal robes that hung strangely too heavy, too stiff, the kind of stiffness that came from concealed armor plating. One of them kept touching his left wrist, where a small device was strapped under his sleeve. Damon set down his glass. He moved to Linnea's side and leaned close. To anyone watching, it looked like a mate whispering something affectionate. What he actually said was, "We need to leave this room in the next 90 seconds. Linnea, to her credit, did not freeze. She did not look around. She simply placed her hand on his arm and began walking toward the nearest exit, speaking calmly to her attendants as she moved. They made it 60 feet before the first explosion. The blast came from the station's lower docking level, a shaped charge that blew out the power relays and plunged the reception hall into emergency lighting. Red light washed over everything. Screams erupted from dozens of species at once. A second explosion hit the corridor they were heading toward, and the ceiling collapsed in a rain of metal and sparks. Linnea was thrown sideways. Her 2 attendants, young Vathari courtiers named Pella and Dorath, were knocked to the ground. Dust filled the air. Alarms screamed. Damon did not fall. He absorbed the shockwave by shifting his weight, caught Linnea around the waist before she hit the wall, and pulled all 3 of them into an alcove behind a support column. His movements were fast, not panicked fast, but precise fast. Mechanical. Like a machine, clicking into a gear it had always been designed for. "Stay here," he said. His voice had changed. The warmth was gone. What remained was flat, calm, and absolutely certain. Linnea grabbed his arm. "Damon, stay here." He stepped out of the alcove and into the dust-filled corridor. Through the haze, a shape was coming toward them. Big, 8 feet tall, armored in black combat plating with a helmet that covered its entire head. A Crithari shock trooper, carrying a plasma repeater that glowed orange in the red emergency light. The trooper saw the group in the alcove. It raised its weapon. Damon moved. What happened next took 4 seconds. Linnea saw it, and she would remember every fraction of every moment for the rest of her life. Damon closed the distance 20 feet in a single burst of speed that her eyes could barely follow. He did not run like a person runs. He moved like something that had been released from a cage. The trooper fired. The plasma bolt went through the space where Damon had been a tenth of a second earlier. He was already inside the trooper's guard, under the weapon, his hands on the armor. He struck the trooper's left elbow joint not with wild strength, but with surgical precision. The armor buckled inward. The trooper's arm bent the wrong way, and the weapon dropped. Before it hit the ground, Damon had already hit 2 more points. A nerve cluster under the jaw where the helmet met the neck seal, and a pressure point on the inner thigh, where the leg armor was thinnest. The trooper's body seized, locked up, and collapsed like a puppet with cut strings. Alive, unconscious, completely neutralized. Damon turned back to Linnea. He was not breathing hard. There was no sweat on his face. His eyes were the same still, deep pools they had always been. "We should move," he said. Linnea stared at him. Her mind was racing, trying to process what she had just witnessed. The Crithari shock troopers were among the most feared infantry soldiers in the galaxy. They wore powered armor that could stop energy weapons. They were trained from birth to fight. And this human, this soft, small Tier 9 human, had dismantled 1 in 4 seconds with his bare hands. She did not ask questions. There was no time. She took Pella's hand. Damon took Dorath's. And they moved through the damaged station toward the emergency evacuation bays. Along the way, they encountered 2 more attackers. Damon dealt with both of them with the same terrifying efficiency. A redirected strike here. A pressure point there. Bodies folding to the ground like paper in rain. He never killed. He never hesitated. And he never once lost that impossible calm. They reached the evacuation bay and sealed themselves inside a Vathari diplomatic shuttle. Linnea's guards arrived minutes later, having fought their way through the attackers using telekinetic blasts and energy shields. They were bloodied, panting, and shaken. Damon was sitting quietly with his hands folded in his lap. The Vathari guards looked at him with new eyes. Something about the way the attackers in the corridor had been taken down did not match any fighting style in their database. The injuries were too precise, too clean. On the journey back to Ethera, Linnea sat across from Damon in the shuttle. Her attendants slept, exhausted. The guards stood watch at the doors. The 2 of them were, for the moment, alone. "You moved faster than our Praetorians," she said quietly. "You took down a Crithari shock trooper in 4 seconds without a weapon. You knew the attack was coming before it happened." Damon said nothing. "You are not what the Galactic Concord says you are," she continued. "Humans are not Tier 9. Maybe you never were." He looked at her then, and for the first time, the mask was thin enough that she could see something behind it. Not a weapon, not a soldier, a man carrying something heavy. "No," he said, "we are not." Back on Ethera, Commander Thyrak sat in his private command center, watching the security footage from Axis Primera. He watched the human move. He slowed the footage to 1/10 speed and watched again. Then 1/100th speed. At that magnification, he could see what no one in real time could have seen the moment Damon's hand hit the Crithari armor. The metal did not just dent, it rippled. The force transferred through the plating in a wave pattern that should have been physically impossible for an unaugmented biological limb. Thyrak's blood, which had been warm with political satisfaction when he had secretly arranged the Crithari attack, turned cold. He had sent those extremists to embarrass Linnea, to create chaos, to prove that her human mate was a liability. Instead, the human had proven something far more dangerous. "Contact the High War Council," Thyrak said to his lieutenant. His voice was barely above a whisper. "Tell them we have a problem. Humanity has been lying to the entire galaxy." The lieutenant looked at the frozen image on the screen, a human standing over a fallen Krithari shock trooper, calm as still water. "What kind of problem, Commander?" Thyrak did not answer immediately. He stared at the screen, and for the first time in his long military career, he felt something he had only read about in ancient texts. The fear of the unknown. The palace had changed since Axis Primara. The corridors felt tighter. The guards were doubled. Every conversation carried a second meaning underneath the words, and the air itself seemed to hum with tension. Damon noticed all of it. He noticed the new surveillance devices in his quarters, 3 more than before, hidden in the ceiling panels and the base of the window frame. He noticed the Praetorian guards who now followed him at a distance, trying to look casual and failing. He noticed the way courtiers stopped talking when he entered a room, and the way some of them looked at him now, not with amusement, but with something sharper. He had shown too much on Axis Primera. He knew that. The mask had cracked, and cracks drew attention. What he did not expect was what Lineara did next. She came to his quarters on a night when both moons were dark, carrying a small device that she placed on the table between them. She pressed a button, and a soft hum filled the room. Damon recognized it immediately. A privacy field generator, military grade, the kind used in war rooms to prevent surveillance. "Now no one can hear us," she said. She sat down across from him and folded her hands in her lap. Her bioluminescent patterns, which usually shifted in calm, slow rhythms, were pulsing rapidly. She was afraid. But she was here anyway. "Tell me the truth," she said. "All of it." Damon looked at her for a long time. He had been trained for this moment, trained to deflect, to redirect, to maintain the cover at all costs. Director Voss would have told him to lie. The God Seed protocol demanded it. But Lineara had activated a privacy field for him. She had crossed her own palace in the dark, to sit across from him and ask for honesty. She had earned it. So he told her. He told her about Project God Seed. About how, 30 years ago, a team of human geneticists had discovered something impossible, buried deep in human DNA, a sequence so complex and so perfectly structured that it could not have evolved naturally. It was ancient, millions of years old. And it was dormant, waiting for something to wake it up. When they found the key, a precise combination of genetic therapy, neural stimulation, and a mineral compound that did not exist naturally on Earth, but was found in a meteorite, the results were beyond anything they had imagined. The dormant sequence did not just enhance the human body. It unlocked what human biology had apparently always been designed to become. "We become adaptive," Damon said, his voice quiet and steady. "Our reflexes sharpen. Our bones become denser. Our muscles restructure for maximum efficiency. Our brains begin modeling threats before they happen. Not psychic ability, but pattern recognition so fast, it feels like seeing the future. And it scales. The more dangerous the situation, the more the body responds. There is no known upper limit." Lineara listened without interrupting. Her violet eyes were wide, but she did not look away. "How many of you are there?" she asked. "Enough," he said. "Not many. The process is difficult, painful. Not everyone survives it." "Did it hurt?" The question surprised him. Not, "How powerful are you?" or, "What are your weaknesses?" She asked if it hurt. He felt something shift inside his chest, something the God Seed process had not been able to touch. "Yes," he said. "It took 11 months. I was conscious for all of it. My bones broke and reformed 4 times. My nervous system rewired itself while I could feel every nerve. I forgot my mother's name for 3 weeks because my brain was reorganizing how it stored memories." He paused. "I remember everything now. But there are things I lost that I cannot get back. I do not sleep the way I used to. I cannot touch something without calculating how much force I am using. When I am in a room full of people, part of my mind is always identifying threats, mapping escape routes, and calculating how to neutralize every person present." He looked down at his hands that could punch through powered armor. I chose this, he said. But I do not always feel like the person who made that choice. Silence filled the space between them. Linnera's bioluminescent patterns had gone still, completely still, which meant she was feeling something too deep for her body to express through light. Why are you here, Damon? She asked. The real reason. He met her eyes. Because we know what the Vathari Dominion has done. The species you have absorbed. The cultures you have erased. The Rithali, the name you could not find in your archives, they were a tier. 8 civilization with a population of 3 billion. Your empire's uplift program dismantled their society over 6 generations until there was nothing left. Their name was removed from every database. 3 billion people, Linnera. Gone. And they are not the only ones. Linnera's face did not change, but her hands trembled in her lap. I was sent here to confirm what our intelligence suspected, Damon continued. To gather evidence. To be a weapon in position if things went wrong. He paused, and when he spoke again, his voice was different, softer, more human than she had ever heard it. But that is not why I stayed. Why did you stay? Because of you. Because I watched you learn the names of every servant in the consort wing. Because you argued with your advisors when they wanted to cut medical funding to outer colonies. Because when you saw me reading that history text, your first instinct was not anger, it was curiosity. He leaned forward slightly. I did not come here to destroy your empire. I came here to find out if it was worth saving. And I believe the answer is standing in front of me. The air between them felt electric. Linnera's patterns began to glow again, not the usual silver blue, but a deep, warm violet that Damon had never seen before. In Vathari biology, he knew that color meant something profound, something that could not be faked. She reached across the table and placed her hand over his. Then we have work to do, she said. Together. They had 3 days. 3 days of quiet planning, shared intelligence, and a growing bond that neither of them fully understood but both of them trusted. 3 days before everything collapsed. Dr. Quillix, the Jorvian biologist who had scanned Damon during the sparring match, had been summoned to Commander Thyrak's private office. She had tried to refuse. She had tried to hide her data. But Thyrak had resources, leverage, and a willingness to use both. He threatened her research funding, her family's immigration status on Ethera, and finally, her freedom. She gave him everything. Thyrak took the biological data, Damon's impossible cellular density, his engineered bone structure, his neural conductivity readings, and presented it to the Vathari War Council. He framed it as a threat assessment. Humanity, he argued, had been secretly developing super soldiers while pretending to be harmless primitives. The human in the palace was not a mate, he was an infiltrator, a weapon planted in the heart of the Dominion. The War Council was divided, but fear was louder than reason. They authorized Damon's arrest and placed Linnera under political restriction for compromised judgment. Thyrak wanted more. He wanted military action against Earth, but the Council was not ready for that. Not yet. The Praetorians came for Damon at dawn. There were 12 of them. Each one was a veteran warrior, enhanced with Vathari military augmentation, armed with telekinetic abilities and energy weapons. They surrounded Damon's quarters and sealed every exit. Damon felt them coming long before they arrived. His body had already begun to respond, heart rate lowering, senses sharpening, muscles flooding with the precise chemical cocktail that would turn him into something the Praetorians were not prepared for. He could fight. Part of him, the part that Godseed had built, wanted to fight. But through the window of his quarters, he could see the royal tower, where Linnera's chambers were. He could see the lights flickering in her room. She was awake. She was watching. If he fought now, she would lose everything. The Dominion would see humans as the monsters Thyrak wanted them to be. Every plan they had made together would burn. So when the Praetorians broke through his door, weapons raised, telekinetic fields crackling around their fists, Damon Kale, a man who could have killed every one of them before the first shot was fired, raised his hands and let them take him. As they forced him to his knees and locked containment bands around his wrists, he looked up at the window of Linnera's tower. She was there, silhouetted against the light, her hand pressed flat against the glass. I trust you, he said, quietly enough that only she, with her enhanced Vathari hearing, could hear it. The Praetorians dragged him away into the dark, and Linera, standing alone in her tower with tears running silver down her glowing skin, made a decision that would change the galaxy. She would not let them win. They put Damon Kale in a cell designed to hold gods. The containment block sat deep beneath the palace, carved into the bedrock of Ethera itself. The walls were lined with telekinetic dampening fields, energy-absorbing plating, and gravity wells that could crush a starship engine. It had been built centuries ago to imprison Vathari warlords, beings who could shatter stone with their minds and bend metal with a thought. No one had ever escaped from it. Damon sat on the cold floor, eyes closed, breathing slowly. He could feel the energy fields pressing against his skin, like invisible hands. His body cataloged them automatically: frequency, amplitude, cycle pattern. The Godseed systems in his biology were already adapting, learning, finding the gaps. He could have left at any time, but not yet. Not until the right moment. Above him, the Vathari Dominion was tearing itself apart. Commander Thyrak had moved fast after Damon's arrest. He seized control of the War Council through emergency authority, placed Linera under house arrest in her own tower, and began preparing his final argument for a preemptive strike against Earth. He had evidence of humanity's secret weapon program. He had biological scans proving the human in their palace was an engineered super soldier. Fear was his most powerful weapon, and he wielded it well. But Linera was not sitting in her tower, waiting to be rescued. On the second night of her confinement, she accessed the restricted archives that Damon had pointed her toward weeks ago. The files were buried deep, hidden behind layers of encryption that had been maintained for centuries. It took her 6 hours to break through, using access codes that only the royal bloodline possessed. What she found inside made her weep. Records. Hundreds of them. Species after species, systematically dismantled by the Vathari Dominion over thousands of years. The Rithali, the Chelvan, the Osirai, names that had been erased from every public database, populations that had been absorbed, scattered, and forgotten. Cultural extinction, dressed up as benevolent uplift. 3 billion here, 500 million there. A quiet genocide spread across millennia, so slow that no single generation noticed the blood on their hands. Linera had grown up believing her empire was a force for good. That belief died in those archives. She did not mourn it. She used it. Using a hidden communication channel that Damon had set up during their 3 days of planning, she transmitted the complete archive to every Concord broadcast frequency simultaneously. The signal was encrypted in a way that Vathari military could not block, because it used human encryption, and the Vathari had never bothered to study human technology. The effect was immediate and devastating. 12 species that had been living as Vathari client states saw the truth of how they had been absorbed. 3 major Concord members, the Jorvian Republic, the Dren Collective, and the Chalari Swarm, withdrew their support from the Dominion within hours. Diplomatic channels exploded with outrage. Thyrak's narrative of humanity as the threat was drowned under the weight of evidence that the Vathari had been the true threat all along. Thyrak watched his political foundation crumble in real time. And like all tyrants who felt the ground shifting under their feet, he chose violence. Deep in the Dominion's core territories, hidden for thousands of years, there existed a weapon called the Sunthorn Array. It was ancient Vathari technology, a network of energy projectors capable of destabilizing a star. It had been built during the First Galactic War and never used. Thyrak activated it now and aimed it at Earth's sun. His ultimatum was broadcast across all channels: surrender the Godseed program, and every enhanced human, or Earth's star, would be collapsed. Humanity had 12 hours. The galaxy held its breath. Earth's response came 6 hours later. A single transmission, broadcast openly, with no encryption. We do not negotiate with those who threaten our sun. You have 12 hours to stand down. After that, we come for the array, and we are bringing all of them. Every intelligence agency in the Concord scrambled to understand what all of them meant. In his cell beneath the palace, Damon opened his eyes. He had felt the shift not through any communication device, but through a vibration in the energy fields around him. The containment system was drawing more power, which meant the palace above was diverting energy somewhere critical. The Sunthorn array was online. He stood up. The containment field around him was operating at a frequency of 847.3 terahertz, cycling every 0.003 seconds. His body had been mapping the pattern for 2 days. He knew the gap, a window of 0.0004 seconds between cycles, where the field dropped by 12%. For any other being in the galaxy, that window was meaningless. For Damon, it was a door. He moved. The containment field flickered and failed. The gravity wells pulsed, trying to pin him. He was already past them. The alarm screamed. The guards outside his cell, 4 Praetorians. The best the Dominion had turned to face the door. The door was no longer there. It had been removed from its frame in a single, precise strike. Damon stepped through. What followed would be studied by military academies across the galaxy for centuries. He moved through the palace like something out of a nightmare, not fast in the way that animals are fast, but fast in the way that thought is fast. He did not run in straight lines. He flowed, redirecting his momentum with every step, changing direction without slowing. The Praetorian guards fired telekinetic blasts that could shatter walls. Damon read the energy patterns in the air before they formed and simply was not where the blasts landed. He dismantled them without killing. A strike to a nerve cluster here. A precise blow to a joint there. Bodies folded and dropped. Energy shields meant to stop plasma weapons failed against hands that found the exact resonance frequency and disrupted it with a touch. Automated defense turrets tracked him, fired, and hit nothing. He was predicting their targeting algorithms faster than they could calculate. 12 Praetorians fell in the first corridor, 8 more in the second. A squad of heavy weapons specialists set up a barricade at the entrance to the throne wing. Damon went through the wall beside them, emerging from the dust and debris with a calm expression that was somehow more frightening than any battle cry. He never raised his voice. He never showed anger. He was not fighting with emotion. He was fighting with certainty. In orbit above Aethera, 3 human stealth ships decloaked vessels so small and silent that the entire Vaethari defense fleet had missed them. Each ship carried a single Godseed operative. They began surgical strikes on the Sunthorn array's power relays with a precision that made Vaethari weapons officers stare at their screens in disbelief. 3 ships, against the largest fleet in the Concord, and the fleet could not touch them. Damon reached the throne room. Thyrak was waiting. He stood behind a massive console, the manual override for the Sunthorn array. His finger hovered over the activation switch. He was 7 feet tall, armored in the finest Vaethari battle plate, his telekinetic aura blazing around him like a silver fire. "One more step," Thyrak said, "and I fire the array. Your son dies. Your species dies. All of them." Damon stopped. They faced each other across the throne room, the alien commander, burning with power and desperation, and the human, standing still and calm and more dangerous than anything the galaxy had ever produced. Thyrak attacked first. The telekinetic blast was the most powerful thing Damon had ever felt, a wall of invisible force that could have leveled a building. It hit him in the chest and pushed him back 3 feet. His boots left grooves in the stone floor. He did not fall. His body absorbed the energy. His cells processed it, converted it, redistributed it through systems that human scientists barely understood. He felt the power flow through him like electricity through a wire, and he took another step forward. Thyrak screamed and threw everything he had, blast after blast, each one stronger than the last. The throne room shattered around them. Pillars cracked. The ceiling groaned. Damon walked through it all. With every step, he got faster. With every blast he absorbed, he got stronger. His body was doing what it had been designed to do, adapting to the threat in real time, scaling upward without limit. Thyrak threw one final desperate blast, the kind that left Vaethari warlords drained and unconscious. Damon caught it. He caught it with his bare hand. The energy crackled around his fingers, bright and wild. He held it for a moment, feeling the raw power of 10,000 years of Vaethari supremacy burning in his palm. Then he turned and slammed it into the array's override console. The console exploded. The Sunthorn array went dark. In orbit, the power relays went offline one by one, like stars winking out. Thyrak fell to his knees, drained and broken. Damon stood over him, not even breathing hard. "Humanity does not need to destroy you to win," Damon said. "We just needed you to see that you cannot destroy us." The aftermath unfolded like a wave breaking against a shore. Thyrak was arrested by his own officers, who had watched their greatest warrior be outmatched by a being they had considered a pet. The Sunthorn array was dismantled. The Vathari Dominion, exposed and fractured, entered a period of reformation, unlike anything in its long history. Lineara was restored to her position not by birthright alone, but by the voice of a changed people who had seen the truth and chosen a different path. She began the long, painful work of dismantling the systems of exploitation her empire had been built on. It would take generations. She was ready. The Galactic Concord reclassified humanity. They were no longer Tier 9. The debate over their new classification would continue for years, because no existing tier seemed to fit a species that had been hiding this deeply, this patiently, for this long. On the night after it all ended, Lineara found Damon standing on a balcony overlooking Aethera's glowing ocean. He was bruised, tired, and for the first time since she had known him, the weight behind his eyes had lifted just slightly, just enough. She stood beside him. The wind carried the scent of the bioluminescent sea. "You could have done all of this without me," she said. He shook his head. "No. I could have won without you. That is not the same thing." She looked at him, this impossible man, this quiet weapon, this person who had chosen gentleness when his every cell was built for war. "What happens now?" she asked. He looked out at the stars, billions of them, burning in the dark, each one a promise and a mystery. "Now we build something that does not need weapons to survive." She leaned into him, and he put his arm around her carefully, always carefully, because he would never stop being what he was. "But it is nice to know we have one," she said softly. He smiled, a real smile, the kind that God's seed could not give and could not take away. "Yeah," he said. "It is." Above them, the stars burned on, indifferent and eternal.